Hello and welcome everyone to our wonderful afternoon of live genius theory with myself, Dr. Deb Drake, and my co-host Michaela, and all of you wonderful geniuses out there who are studying on how to keep yourself in the greatest self-care, highest potential, peak performance you can be using biotechnology and nutrition and good light, sound, and bioterrain correcting modalities. So I thank all of you who are brand new for joining us for the first time. And I thank all of you who've been here for a few weeks listening to me sort of throw my spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks with you guys. I hope that you've been learning something, and all of us can certainly continue our education through our lives to keep learning new tricks, because new technology is coming out, new advancements in science, the most important one being computer speeds have now, shortened the time of things, and they've gotten to like 9 decimal places of gigahertz, gigabytes. We're getting into even like terabytes, and now we're actually able to really store a lot of information in small locations with small amount of compactness. Now, I love this model that we've been using for our theme is the shell, because I've talked to you for many weeks now and months about the pineal gland being the light center of the body that sends light down to the hypothalamus, which drips all these different frequencies into different chakras based on their color coding. And that color coding is basically a different frequency spectrum for each color, or a different frequency spectrum for each note on the piano, or a different frequency spectrum for each mineral. And when you start combining minerals, you can make complex shapes called complex fractals, but they still are repeating. They keep their same form and shape. And this is why when we boil an herb 8 times into the tar of the herb, called an Ayurvedic pellet, that is a 25-year half-life, because it's capturing the essence of the frequency or the fingerprints of the structure of that unique molecule in that herb. Okay, the same goes for homeopathy. The frequency of a liver is a different frequency than an inflamed liver, and frequencies can be additive, like some herbs push things into us, some herbs drag things out of us. They're purgative and diuretic herbs. So some herbs have a positive left spin to move things into you. Other herbs have a negative spin on them and suck poisons out of you. And some are neutral. They're called adaptogenic herbs, like moringa, that can go up or down or sideways and do anything you want, depending on the needs of whatever you're giving it to. There are a few herbs in the world like that. You've probably heard of noni juice is an adaptogen, a moringa. I believe there's probably one of the more famous, most expensive herbs in the world is probably cordyceps, which can turn on your ATP and adapt every organ to come online. So why are we talking about all this? Well, it's important that you know that there's not just one silver bullet for every disease. There's not just one frequency for every disease or one frequency for every bug. There's sort of like a spectrum of fingerprints along a bandwidth. And for every bug that has a certain element, it has a certain set of light codes or sound codes or magnetic codes. Some of them are very low magnetic codes, like the brain speeds of 30 hertz, 20 hertz, 10 hertz, 5 hertz, right? Beta, alpha, theta, delta waves. So those are best helped by magnetic frequencies, which are light and magnetic coiling. The frequencies in the middle of the frequency spectrum, from 50 hertz, say, to 1500 hertz, in the mid-range of the orchestra, is called the sympathetic nervous system. It relates to the heart and the blood vessels and the pumping actions of pumping up adrenaline and noradrenaline and dopamine and getting action started, okay? And then at the high range of the sound spectrum, from 1500 hertz up to, say, 8,000, 10,000, and even above 20,000, those are the frequencies primarily of the vagus nerve or the parasympathetic nervous system that slow you down, bring you into digestion, relaxation, muscle relaxation, etc. So the brain is more like the command center that needs the most voltage and the most light to transmute its high levels of signaling. The heart has magnets in it to maintain a magnetic field in the middle. And then the vagus nerve has a lot of light receptors, again, called the enterochromaffin cells, like Christmas tree lights down your guts, that help with peristalsis forward or back, or recognizing foreign poisons, traumas, and such. We talked about that in the last couple of weeks, okay? So I want to bring your attention to the fact that if there is a soundboard like a keyboard, as you see on my piano here, right? If you have a soundboard that can detect both, shall we say, the frequencies of light and sound, and transduce them back and forth in between each other, Then we have the amazing capacity to transduce higher frequencies into the low zones and low frequencies into the high zones because they're mimicking each other in coordination. Okay. Just let me turn on a little light here, one sec. Sorry, I looked like I was talking in the dark there. Okay, so let's go on to remind you of our last couple of weeks. We've been talking about these things in talking to you in the respect that every cycle per second, when it goes in its full sine wave curve, is called one wavelength. Okay, so wavelengths of light can be categorized, as we saw, like UVA, UVB, UVC at anywhere from 350 nanometers or 350 hertz up to 900 hertz, which is the big light spectrum that we talked about. And colors within that rainbow can be sub channels. Okay, just like one octave has 12 sub notes, we have these 12 color bands, shall we say, chakra bands, wavelength bands, like an air traffic controller talking to 10 different planes all in the sky at the same time, and he's rotating their landing sequences. The body's circadian rhythm walks around this circadian rhythm through frequencies. Now, the distance between each successive wave is a wavelength, and the number of times a wave oscillates in a second is called the cycles per second, or hertz. Okay, but as a general rule, there's a very high overlap between the piano and the hertz at nanometer lengths around below 1000 hertz. So the light therapies between 300 and 1000 hertz are very, very powerful. I'm going to show you about that today. So as a general rule, the longer the wavelength, the deeper it penetrates you. Okay. Remember the old adage when in the war, they used to use submarines and they'd have a 1 mile long wavelength so that the U-boats couldn't find each other or get bombed underwater. So they used very long wavelengths to penetrate deeper and wider across the ocean. Well, we're going to show you that light therapy, and especially in the red spectrum of light, penetrates the skin deeper and stimulates the ATP and the nitric oxide and dilation of your blood vessels better than some of the higher frequency light colors, okay? Higher density cycles per second. So the lower the cycles per second, the more penetrating it is for the skin, okay? And as each color has its own frequency, last week we talked about, there's many different colors of the spectrum that you can use for color therapy. Now, for those of you who weren't here last week, I can jump back 5 slides, but let's just go forward and you can review last week's replay, okay? We talked at length about the longer wavelength in red, full of zinc to help the base chakra. The orange is full of tin colors for the spleen. The green, or I should put yellow in there, is sulfur for the liver. Green is for the magnesium, molybdenum, manganese, and the iron of the heart. The light blue is the copper for thyroid and thymus in the middle there. The dark blue magenta, the dark blue cobalt color is for cobalt or cyanocobalamin vitamin B12 for memory, carbohydrate metabolism, production of neurotransmitters. It makes you sane, okay? Without B12, you're an anemic, exhausted, weeping mess. And we also have the purple color, which is magenta from manganese for the pineal gland. So when you're using these neurotransmitters and these minerals and these colors, when you're using your Genius program or any biofeedback program, such as the Odyssey program, which is the layman's version of the Genius program, where you can just get right into work without having to program yourself, those are all built in a way to the different minerals, the different vitamins, the different neurotransmitters. They're also built into the frequencies when you're using the sacred geometry, when you're using the Fibonacci spiral, when you're using the grounding of the circle of life to bind and hold like a receiver to the transmission dish of lights, when you use the mitochondrial repairs to help you absorb light into the crystals of the mitochondria. So we're really talking about kind of like, okay, you got 6 different cell phones all talking to different organs here, and each one of them runs on a different wavelength, okay? Now, I want to show you where ingeniously the Genius program has centered in on the very incredible therapeutic effects of the red and near infrared LEDs. And that light therapy is best suited because it transduces the blood vessels and the skin very well. It's very well suited for pain management, stress, circulation repairs, you're talking, unless the person is in a hypertensive crisis where they're actually overheated with a high blood pressure crisis. In general, this over time cools the blood vessels down, makes them more responsive and relaxed and less stiff, which is over time going to reduce high blood pressure by improving nitric oxide in the arteries so that they're more flexible and flow better. LEDs can also be used for relaxation, especially because the red light is great for the gonads, the genitals, the adrenal gland, the lower chakras. It can be very good for nighttime relaxation, and then blood flow and stimulation and blood production with the higher zinc content in the bone marrow, the higher zinc and delivery of blood flow to the stem cells, the higher zinc content of red to the G-spot and prostate, which create the stem cells that create the spark of life, which all depend on zinc and which are often depleted from zinc, as we've talked about for weeks, due to parasites. And then I'd like to also mention that if you're already increasing blood flow somewhere, you're going to increase the anti-inflammatory effects in that area because the blood is flowing more white blood cells and fibroblasts and collagen and healing and sulfur and silver and all the things that heal our tissues are going to be flowing into the wound, right? So basically, red light is an anti-inflammatory and a painkiller without using drugs, needles. It's needleless acupuncture, really. And you can also really bank on one last area, which I think is one of the most important elements. And this is why this is not just used for people who are ill, but for people who are athletic. And that is that it produces ATP. And I would like you, if you haven't heard about me talking about the ATP and nitric oxide production of light, you can look at our replay from last week at ilovemygenius.com in our forum where I run the blog, and I post last week's lecture on that topic. But just to summarize last week, we talked about the fact that here we go. You have sorry, go back up. We have what I'm trying to show you is the blue to red spectrum of light has a very finite spectrum of frequencies that can be digitally interchanged with each other. So your genius can play these frequencies and it will trigger that violet color that will talk to that magenta pineal gland. You can use the 462.023 hertz to speak to the sulfur in the liver to get that yellow chakra kicking in. You can use the orange color of 440 hertz to operate the spleen and tune up that organ to clean up fungus and parasites better and to produce more peroxidase for cancer repair. Okay. And I want you to know that there's a little bit of a controversy of exactly these numbers because some of the scales were based on the 440 hertz scales. And I have been preaching to you that by using other more pure tones in the 432 scale, you can also use more perfect notes on the piano and perfect 432 pitches. I gave you all those charts, but I gave you your tissue salt charts a week or so ago. Remember, I said each organ has a specific tissue salt. Now, I don't want to get too off the track here, but realistically, what's impressive is that you can now take a biophotonic light wand here with 20 LEDs here, okay? And these LEDs can be synchronized because they're all flashing at the same time to have additive voltage together. So instead of just one little LED with one signal on it, we can alternate the signals and or multiply by pulsating 20 of them at a time in various combinations. We can actually reproduce the signals of playing a piano on your brain. We're playing all these different notes of red, blue, orange, green, yellow, but we're not giving you the colors of the rainbow in this. We're using the red color as the carrier wave, and that red is very carrier wave handy to go deep into the tissues. But then we're adding on these frequency codes by Bluetooth, our tablet, which is our Genius software program. And therein we lie our own personalized, customized voice print, which is recommending which of these colors or which of these minerals or which of these frequencies is missing in us so that we can actually develop a personalized, customized light therapy program for ourselves based on our own needs at the exact moment that we do it, deliver it from Bluetooth to put it on our wristband. And now we can be walking around the house doing the laundry and still, attending to our athletic performance if we wanted to, while we're mobile with our PEMF. Now you might ask, remember we talked about biofeedback is the frequency, okay? which is the x-axis on the frequency response curve, but the volume is the voltage, okay? The voltage is the pumping pressure. And you need at least 12.5 microteslas to enter the brain. 33 to 66 microteslas or millivolts will really tune up the brain, according to an $8 million NASA study. And 70 millivolts will heal a bone or a cell wall. We know that 70 millivolts is a healthy cell wall and 20 millivolts is a cancerous cell wall. So now we want to say, well, it's maybe not just good enough to flash a color into you. Maybe we could actually pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Don't you love that bass? So when we put it on that bass line of that red boom, 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 we're carrying in higher frequencies that are capable of giving us a deeper penetration and a wider spectrum of light piggyback digitally on those same red lights. So in that case, I don't have to have a red light, a blue light, a green light on this wristband. I can use the red color as the carrier and piggyback all the other colors digitally on that magic carpet ride, which will now go into the cell. Now let's add on, isn't that amazing? I mean, like when you stop to think about it, that's pretty bloody profound. Now let's ask one more question. Is there another way to pump up the bass? Well, I told you that the bass for the brain needs more voltage, more power than the mid-range, okay? The brain, whereas the brain needs 70 millivolts, the heart needs about 50, and the guts need about 25 millivolts. And you can even half that in children, but still, or senior citizens, okay? But still, what if I was able to put a magnetic PEMF base booster, if you will, like we've talked about using the Insight Genius coil, which is a magnetic field generator. And what does it do? It just doesn't produce a little beam of light or a little frequency in your ear. It actually produces a vortex of 3 feet wide, fountain-like pumping voltage, like a fountain that's pumping the colors of different colors, like the Bellagio fountain in Vegas. There's a lot of water spraying with voltage and pumping, but there's a lot of different colors coming in as the spotlights change on the symphony, right? So they've color coordinated the lights and the sound onto the fountain. So we're talking about a wearable LED PEMF device that can be transducing the biofeedback in 3 dimensions into a absolute amazing technology through your skin, deep into your arteries, opening up nitric oxide, opening up ATP production, and therefore reducing inflammation, reducing pain, improving sports recovery, improving heart and circulatory issues, improving wound repair, improving collagen formation, improving skin wrinkles. All the things that to do with skin are all treated with the frequencies of light. So anything to do with dermatology is going to be a no-brainer that it's going to be great to use this, unless there's an actual broken skin, pus pocket, abscess. You wouldn't want to put light therapy right on an open wound, okay? It makes kind of sense, right? And also because people are touching this with your skin, you might want to use, you know, a little, because light goes through and magnets go through cloth, you could even put a tissue between that and your skin and you'd still get the frequency delay and the magnetic field, I think. Okay, so wow, now just think about what I've just said to you. So we can actually hum a tune, put it on a magic carpet ride, and have it delivered by having a magnet attached. What does the magnet do? It opens up the moat on the castle. It has the magnetic ability to open the gates on the cell wall, which are magnetic, right? The sodium potassium pump and ATP runs the glucose that opens up the gates, and your cells go, hey, come on in, food, or hey, get out, bad stuff, or opens up the hydrational and crystal absorption into the cell, okay? So by adding in the color that we like on the piggyback of deeper penetration and then pumping up the volume with the magnetic field, we've got a triple winner here, okay? So it's a wearable LED, which is not a laser that burns. Remember last week we talked about incoherent light. So it's not burning, it's not hot, it can't be dangerous, there's no major side effects. And it can be used by anybody of any disease on any condition, unless they have some allergy to light, which is rare, or some skin condition that would prohibit it. or they were in an active state of a crisis, of a hypertensive crisis, there's practically anybody in the world could use this, okay? It's like going out and playing in the sunshine inside your house. Now, can you imagine how great that is for us in Canada when it gets dark in the winter? But also, you know, there's a lot of people who are sick and they don't know it, because when you first get sick, the subtleties of underneath the what's the word I'm looking for? Underneath the invisible shield of our compensatory mechanisms, there's often a lot of diseases working on below the surface. So that's my take on it, is that as we start to get smarter, faster, smaller, less invasive, less expensive, we start to get right down to being able to give self-care back to our clients right in their home. And as many of you may or may not know, there's another program besides the Genius program for those who have no knowledge or no desire to learn about the programming of a Genius program. You can use the Genius Autopilot, but there's also the Odyssey app, where you can just Bluetooth right onto your wristband, okay? So you can check that out if you don't know anything about that, and I think we should have a demo on that. So I'm just basically talked to you last time about all the light therapy. We talked about how you need to rotate your seasonal light day and night cycles. We talked about rotating your organs day by every 2 hours every day. We talked about rotating the wood, fire, earth, air, water seasons as you go. Then we talked about the light uses and contraindications, which are relatively few. You just don't use green light on a tumor because it doubles DNA synthesis and grows tumors, and you don't use purple light on a child's pineal gland, which is already large and growing. We also talked about polarized sunglasses versus non-polarized light from the sun with UVA, B, and C light. We talked about polychromatic light with many different colors, or monochromatic, such as one color, as we're using here with monochromatic light color. We also talked about incoherent blurred light, which is where an LED scatters the light a little bit so it doesn't get so hot and burn you. And it's very gentle on the system, and the body doesn't repulse it and say, hey, that's too harsh on me. As opposed to coherent lasers are so beamed up, you know, so in sync with each other, on top of each other in a coherent linear scalar wave, that they can be used to signal, you know, a laser pointer on a board, you know, hundreds of yards away, or a pilot could be signaled from the ground and get you arrested if you try and flash a laser beam at a pilot up in space, right? Or we could cut the eyes with a laser beam using LASIK surgery. I talked about all of those last week. Now, I do want to really make sure you understand that low-level energy and high-powered energy do different things. And in the field of medicine, we prefer to use low-level energy that doesn't have complications, side effects, burning, scarring. But there are some medicinal uses for high-powered lasers, okay? We do it for cautery in the ICU or the operating room. As I said, we could do cautery on LASIK eye surgery. However, in the case of using home tools for people who are sometimes unaware, sick, ill, forgetful, I don't want to have something that could be dangerous, and therefore using a low-cost, low-level, incoherent, monochromatic light system that's synchronized to magnetic therapy in one monochromatic wavelength of red for best penetration. This is why I've adapted this as one of my primary favorite tools, because it has all of the elements that I've been teaching for 20 years, all in one little beautiful, simple packet here, okay? Now, for those of you who wanted to get a little of the details, the spectrum of red light is around 680 nanometers, but it does vary a little bit above and below that, okay? But it is the longest wavelength to penetrate the skin deeper, and it is especially important for rebooting the base chakra. Now, this is the color of orgasm, okay? And if I can just make a little rhyme for you guys, when you think about it, the brain is made of a zinc and copper buttons that release dopamine or orgasm. That is called the impulse control center of the amygdala, which is attached by a coil to your limbic system, your hippocampus and memory, and your thalamus for posture. And it helps you look where you're going and look where you hear something bang, and it helps you move your head. It helps you go forward if you decide yes, or hold back if you decide no. So it is the complete control button, like on the game board where you have those thumb, what do you call it, the consoles? Your amygdala, it runs on zinc and copper, okay? Now, the zinc is red. So like, if you don't understand this, the hormones that give dopamine are red, like a bull charging, right? Versus the calming hormones of sleep are more blue and purple. So by actually giving the body a red signal, the root chakra and the base chakra open up. They create more stem cells in the prostate and G-spot. They create more sperm in the testicles and ovum in the ovaries. It produces zinc and vitamin C in the adrenals to make sex hormones and stress hormones and glucocorticoid hormones. So, we're talking about in a woman, the adrenals make testosterone, whereas in a man, the adrenals make estrogen and progesterone. And so we have a cross-fertilization of sexual hormones in our gonads, alternating with the opposite sex hormones in our adrenal. Now, the reason I say this is so important is if you have chronic adrenal exhaustion, you won't have enough zinc to create the opposite sex hormone. This could make a hormone disruption in your aggressiveness or your lethargy or your fat content in your body or your sexual preferences. And if you have a parasite in the gut that's sucking all the zinc and red frequencies out of your stem cells, your immune system could get depleted, your adrenals could get depleted, the ovaries and testicles could get depleted, so you don't have as much power to reproduce another copy of yourself, and you start having degenerative diseases over time. This is why I've been harping on the zinc to think. Zinc keeps you pink. Zinc if you stink or need a shrink. Zinc if your belly won't shrink or if your winky dink keeps shrinking. Everything that has to do with ejaculation, orgasm, and the procreation of the species is due to that spark of light that comes when zinc is released, and a huge blast of light comes off of a zinc molecule and oxygen, and it gives kind of like a flashlight in the dark inside the body to get crystal work done. Now, I'm going into this in great detail because you may think that I'm oversimplifying it, but can you imagine that with us really concentrating on the spectrum of zinc and the 240 to 680 range of light, and we basically get the wavelengths through the skin into our root chakras, we're going to start actually anti-aging ourselves. We're going to turn on our stem cells to make better repeated heart and liver repairs at night when we're sleeping. We're going to think better and make better, less impulsive decisions. We're going to have better emotional relationships with zinc and copper in our brain because we're going to be more loving and kind and sexy and growing properly, like teenagers are using growth hormone at night, growing an inch a night in some adolescent boys, right? So you have to realize that if you have the root of the copper and zinc three-prong plug, and you add on one extra hormone in there, you get the whole chakra system of the human being. Let me say it to you another way. Over 200 enzymes use zinc as their catalyst to get that enzyme going. A plus B plus zinc equals C. And all the hormones that you make have to land on a zinc receptor. For instance, many people, even doctors, don't know that your ovaries make progesterone and estrogen, but they're inactive until they go to the liver, where the liver rips off the zip tag, price tag, and then sends them back as free progesterone or free testosterone. And that is the active component that grows your hair and your muscles and your sex drive and your beautiful skin and your breasts and your secondary sex characteristics, okay? So without zinc, all hormones have nowhere to land. So you've got to realize the importance of what I'm saying to you is these red chakra lights, the root chakra, the zinc in your diet, the zinc at 150 milligrams, for instance, used in the pandemic, has been shown to actually dramatically improve people's response to hospitalizations, especially when used with vitamin D and K and quercetin. We're having, people improve in their influenza symptoms. Even ivermectin is a zinco-ionophore, which drives zinc into the cell, and zinc kills parasites and viruses. Now, how would somebody get so low in zinc? How could they get so low in zinc? Is because parasites have the same ovaries and testicles, the same adrenal glands, and the same electrical system that needs a lot of zinc. So the longer you have a pinworm growing a colony for a month or a year or a decade before you dewormed your dog and yourself, the longer you're going to be depleted in zinc, the more zinc you're going to lose out of the entire system, causing gray hair, very strong phyllgium of the lip here, this kisser, your little phyllgium dent here, when it's really pronounced, you're talking about adrenal and prostate stress there. May make for a good kisser, but it might be an indication of an impotent man or woman who doesn't have enough zinc, and so their lips are pursing in distress. When someone is Alzheimer's, they lose this zinc reflex here. When you tap someone's lip, they blink, and somebody who eventually gets used to you tapping, they stop blinking. But an Alzheimer's patient with no zinc in their brain, you tap their forehead or their eyes and they keep on blinking every time. They can't stop because they don't have the impulse control from the zinc in the amygdala. that controls the frontal brain dopamine, right? What is Alzheimer's? As low frontal brain dopamine, but doesn't it mean obvious to you that low dopamine would be, which is made of zinc and tyrosine, by the way, and regulated by zinc and copper. So anybody who's got a frontal brain disorder, they must be low in zinc. So who's going to steal the zinc? It's the worms. I'm going to say that right now. The parasites of worms copulate and hatch one zinc molecule for every egg. So every full moon, they hatch 20,000 eggs. They're sucking 20,000 molecules of zinc out of you every 2 weeks. This is going to lead to white fingernail lines. Everybody look at your fingers. Is there a white stripe on your nail somewhere indicating either vitamin D deficiency or zinc? When you have parasites, the parasites suck out the vitamin C and the zinc, leading to moonless nails. Does everybody have a little tiny crescent moon in their nail right near the cuticle? When that starts missing, the oxygen content in the body is dropping and they're becoming more and more acidic. So these are the early warning signs that somebody's gray-haired, that they have very pursed lips, they have tight neck muscles from dopamine, they may have ADHD or poor frontal concentration or poor impulse control, addiction control, gambling control, sex addiction, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, prostatitis, tired adrenals with a hump in their back, or skinny people who have had the worms so long that they got into adrenal exhaustion and they got no muscles on their skinny little legs, okay? So I harp on this. I hope I'm not driving you crazy, but this is one of the most important clinical findings I've ever really stuck to in my travels. And that's because I traveled to 60 countries. I got a parasite on the beach here and there and everywhere, ended up losing my nails, getting white stripes, going gray at 40, suddenly lost my period and had premature menopause. And I had to deworm myself for about a decade after all the vaccines and measles shots I took and international vaccines and antibiotics. And God knows, I was in the medical profession. I was exposed to a lot of drugs and stressful conditions to wear down my adrenals. The most in particular one that was most wearing on me was working on the night shift as a trauma doctor, and you're wearing out your adrenals with all these gunshot and stab wounds and rape victims all night, and you're not being able to replenish because you were up all night, so you never restored your zinc levels. Now, for me, that led to quite a big gut dysbiosis that led me to learn about yeast and how yeast grows in heavy metals. Then I learned to get the heavy metals out of my mouth, and I haven't had any problems with any of it since. And in fact, my hair has gone back. Well, I have a few gray hairs for sure, but I have been increasing my darkness of my hair again as the zinc is coming back. Now, the richest plant in zinc, by the way, is Moringa oleifera. I want you to check my website, healthcounts.com, if you want some nutritional links. And I am going to put a link up here to our LED, but let's come down and just talk about this just a little bit longer here before I reveal our new announcement here. So we're using low-level LED monochromatic incoherent light to deliver light codes through the skin. We're delivering the selective frequencies of the red and infrared spectrum, or the blood flow, shall we say, vascular stimulating frequencies. It also improves lymphatic flow. It also improves the meridian light sensitive organs. It also can be piggybacking other frequency carrier codes, as I mentioned, called quantum tunneling effect. That's the official name for that, okay? And light therapy can instantly create, not waiting for a while for a fire to burn or to heat up the oven. It's an instantaneous flash. The moment that the light is on, the moment that it's flashing, right? As soon as I have light, it is an instantaneous hit. So it produces a positive coherence of the sound and light waves together using incoherent light and waveforms to help restructure your body into proper form at the speed of light by filling up those mitochondrial capacitor batteries by night and letting you redistribute all that energy by day. Its effect lasts all through the whole next day. Even if you only did this for, 20 to 25 to 40 minutes is all you need for light therapy. In fact, even after 8 minutes, you can get dramatic improvements on light therapy. And after 2 minutes, the oxygen level doubles. So if you want to use a shorter session more frequently during the day, like a session before you go exercising, maybe when you come home you want to restore afterwards, then you can use multiple sessions. I recommend no more than about 90 minutes per day because your body hits about a saturation point. Now, some of you are brand new and you may not have this software on our Genius tablet here. So if you want to do a 2-week free trial of the Genius software, you can contact Insight apps for the Genius sign up biofeedbackapps.com. Sign up Dr. Drake 432 at gmail.com. I also have a new link that I have in here for people who want to try to buy the purchase of the device, and or if you want to look at the quantum cap where you can deliver as a coach these frequencies to another client, such as they would have the quantum cap, you create the recipe and ship that over to them by email, and then they can work from home on themselves. Then you can send them another recipe next week. Okay, so these are ways where we can actually help you as a coach distribute light therapy. The benefit is that you can now take the Genius Quantum Cap or the Odyssey program and then deliver it to the light wand without having to have a lot of medical knowledge or training or programming. You could just use our pre-formulated modules that have the most common elements of pain, stress, relaxation, mind, body, spirit, emotional repairs, and you can just use those on yourself and groom through the matrix little by little. Now, some of you may or not be aware that I have been doing a Genius Live Pearls, Tips, Strategies, a Genius Bioterrain class, a Genius Sound class, and last week we finished, or a couple of weeks ago, we finished the Music is Magnetic course. And after this week, we're going to have a light course for you. If any of you want to watch those, you need to go up to ilovemygenius.com in the main feed and register yourself in our blog. And if you look down to the left side of the menu, there is an events page where you see us live in here in this classroom, or you can go down to the very bottom where it says classes. And that's where you can take my previous classes that were posted on YouTube and have been reassembled into a classroom with the opportunity to get some really good education and the PDF of the class. And if there's a relevant module or library that I've created for that class, like the bioterrain class, you can check into that bioterrain library, okay? Now, those bioterrain libraries are going to be a godsend once we start delivering those biofeedback parasite kills to this wrist. And I can tell you, I tried it already, and I was definitely down on the couch for a couple hours after I hammered myself and realized, okay, this is super powerful. You don't have to hit hard and heavy. You just need to go steady, okay? It's like a good boyfriend. You want to go steady, not all, one night stand and all at once and nothing then. That's not going to solve the issue of your forlorn heart. So benefits: wearable PEMF can be combined with frequencies for portability. Pre-programmed or customized frequency journeys can be put in motion with a lot of time saving, as I mentioned, either using our prefab or our quantum cap or the Odyssey program, or you can actually have some of us doctors or whatever and coaches show you how to make up and memorize a new library for yourself as a custom library. So this makes us more mobile, accessible, and versatile, especially since the Genius app can be used on a smartphone, of a tablet, or Android. Okay, that's very rare in the world of bioenergetic equipment, most of which was all built on Android. There's also a sub-menu programs for targeting self-care and a mini little sort of repertoire of chief complaints and history that you can keep track of your clients in. So it's like a portable office with no paperwork, okay? There is an option for coaching remotely. And the Bluetooth on this thing radiates 25 to 50 feet. So I've been putting this on in my living room, but I'm going down the hallway to put my laundry on and coming back, and it's still running just fine. If the lights stop flashing, you've gone outside of the 25-foot radius, okay? Remember that Bluetooth is not the same as Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a very high electromagnetic field that has much more penetration into the brain, whereas Bluetooth is a much lower frequency field and smaller 50 field or 50 meter radius. So it's certainly not going to be as difficult as for those of your clients who have EMF stress or somehow, what's the word, electrosensitivity disorder. It's also helpful for people with chemical sensitivity disorder, okay? Because it can help give the light in there to process old poisons out of the body over time. And it does convert frequencies into magnetic pulses with coherent synchronized light flashes to the PEMF. Even though we're using asynchronous LED light, I'm saying that the magnet is synchronized to the LED. Now we can trigger PEMF therapies at higher voltages, getting deeper into the brain at those lower frequencies for theta, beta, alpha, delta waves. and we can really transduce the heart pacemaker with the magnetic field. We can get deeper into the bones with the magnetic PEMF. We can get into hollow organs with the PEMF. Remember, I taught you magnets go through walls, whereas frequencies run around a cell. A magnet runs through it by opening the gates. So if you want to use less energy, add a magnet to open up the gates, and there's no resistance. So we've combined here light and sound and biofeedback pre-programming with magnetics to create a quicker, deeper penetration at low risk, low side effects, highly tolerable millivolts of energy, perfect for athletes, for active people, for immobile patients, for children, for seniors. I would venture to say for pets. And it's a great tool, as far as I'm finding, for coaching and as a health professional, helping me help a lot more people without taking up hours and hours of my time, because I can export my recipes to others and they can do the work at home themselves. The infrared light is highly advantageous because it's using the red and infrared light without the far infrared, which can be more like a heating unit. Okay, it's cool, so it doesn't burn you. It's safe light that can reduce the risk of laser burns, and it interfaces with the body at the best penetration and the longest wavelength for nitric oxide and ATP. And it can also trigger skin light receptors, which most people don't talk about. Even blind people can actually sense changes in skin. Their skin can change and has nanite receptors as a secondary ganglion off the back of their optic nerve that actually goes to a visual cortex without going to the retina. So there are ways to perceive light through the skin, is what I'm trying to say. And as I've been talking for months, the light receptors in the gut, I believe, are really benefiting from this light therapy. This is why I'm using it more than almost anything else. The enterochromaffin cells of the gut are the ones that are the most sick and light deprived of anything in that dark tunnel down there, full of constipation and manure and pelvic lack of emptying or herniations or prolapsing of organs down there. I mean, it's a cesspool in the ditch down there if you don't take care of it on a day-to-day basis. And here we are sending light to cause the serotonin and enterochromaffin cells to peristalsis better. So now we're going to have less constipation. We're going to poop out those worms better. We're going to evacuate that yeast off the cell wall, off the bowel wall easier. We're going to get rid of those heavy metals in the rectal veins, and the hemorrhoids can shrink. The prostate can shrink with all the zinc, and maybe there's going to be less constipation trying to get around a tangerine-sized prostate rather than a walnut-sized, normal-sized prostate. Okay. And all men over 40 or 50, they drop 10% testosterone per decade. And so they're going to have more zinc to get that testosterone back up if they want to maintain their mobility, their mental focus, their IQ, their muscles. Remember that anterior deltoid is all testosterone. If you're shrinking in those anterior delts, start thinking zinc deficiency, prostate insufficiency, stem cell taxation by a worm. What's going on there? And you know, can I take a side angle lens on this for 1 second? What if your stem cells are injured and no zinc? You're going to have disrupted DNA, which could lead to genetic defects in your offspring, or possibly even the transmission of worms through prostatic or, sexual fluids into the womb of the mother or into the womb and birth canal of the baby, causing multi-generational flukes and pinworms and roundworms, causing multi-generational diabetics, psychotics, schizophrenics, autism. These are just written off as incurable diseases, when in fact, I've had absolutely amazing success by getting rid of the parasites in these kind of folk and getting them back on track. I had one little girl who was born with cerebral palsy after having a heart attack in the womb. Her father turned out to be a very heavy cannabis and opioid user. So she was already low in her morphine receptors, her endorphins, and her zinc levels when she was born. And when she was born, she had sudden withdrawal off these opioids and went into a cardiac arrest from no zinc and no dopamine. So the family wondered if she'd stroked out and she couldn't poop and she was, not able to speak. She was just a mess, lying on a bliss board like a vegetable all day long. Well, lo and behold, I looked inside her and she was full of worms from stem to toe, every orifice, the worms in the nose, in the ears, in the mouth, in the trachea, in the belly, in her bladder. So I stayed in her house in her living room for 3 days. And I used quantum medicine to reduce the worms in that child and flood her with zinc. And all of a sudden she started undislocating her shoulders and her back. She was in so much spasm from dopamine psychosis that she was psychotic from all these worms. And as I put the dopamine back into her, all her muscles relaxed and her dislocated hips popped back into the socket. Her belly started pooping. She filled all her diapers. She started eating again. She started looking her parents in the eye. She had a cardiac arrest at the tiny little age. I think she was 8 at the time, or I can't remember if she was 8 or 11, pardon me. But honestly, she had such a miraculous recovery that I promised myself from seeing these kind of recoveries that I would never write off anybody with a psychiatric illness, a diabetic, obesity, prostate cancer, collagen disorders, tight neck muscles, constant adjustment of the neck, liver, gallbladder, any kind of pancreatic disease. I would never again quickly jump to the diagnosis and slap them on a symptomatic treatment before I put them on a detoxification program to remove those competitive parasites that are stealing those essential nutrients from the client, right? Because the moment you start eating vitamins and you think you're doing a great job, you're feeding the best zinc and multivitamins to these parasites too. They're stealing a third of your nutrition. And guess what? They're going to be stealing exactly the same precious minerals that run your thyroid: zinc, tin, copper, nickel, iodine, manganese, cobalt, sulfur. These are the cofactors, along with tyrosine and glycine, that make an adrenal gland and, a thyroid gland, along with what? Selenium. It is selenium that runs the thyroid and selenium that runs the liver, but worms love selenium. Yeast loves selenium and chromium. That's why they say eat an apple a day to keep the chromium in the apple skin to fight the parasites in your pancreas. So I'm saying a lot here, but get me, the big picture is that you are full of worms until proven otherwise in my camp. You've got to either have a yeast pulling out the B vitamins and the serotonin and the sadness is coming on you, or you've got a worm pulling out the dopamine, causing psychosis, belligerence, anger, aggression, addiction, or ADHD, or some dopaminergic discomfort. And all of it is due to the lack of zinc in the base chakra of stem cells to repair us on a cleaning nightly basis. So I've said a lot today, but I want you to understand that this is so subtle and yet so powerful. It's going to be hard to believe that it could do that much. And many other devices on the market in competing with this are costing $4, $5, $10, $25,000. This is going to be on sale for $699 in the pre-sale time, and then it's going to, when it comes out in October, I believe it's going to be $799. Okay, so you might want to jump in on getting yourself on the pre-sale list, getting improved blood flow, reducing the platelet clumping, increasing your antioxidants, stimulating collagen for tissue and skin repair and ligament and sports repair. There's 6 kinds of collagens in the body, half of them in the brain. Don't forget about that. The entire circulation at physiological levels will be improved with no negative side effects from excessive energy induction or burning capacity or heavy duty magnetic therapy. And for every 1 biophoton of light we put in your mitochondria, it triggers 100 million reactions in the dark during sleep, refurbishing your electrons in your DNA to now regenerate itself for longevity and perfect reproduction. So I want you to think about buying a better guide. I call it Human Biotunes Journey. I'm going to be making you some new journeys as we go about what I think is going to be great for anti-aging, one for stress, pain, and relaxation. And when you comb through yourself regularly and symptomatically through your body journeys on your Genius program, and when you augment the PEMF software with biophotomodulation or magnetic therapy, you're going to be super quick at getting healthy. You're going to reserve your energy field. You're going to have resistance to disease. You're going to basically, use it a couple days a week at least, and constantly using your voice print. Keep focusing in on your weakest link in the chain to get stronger and stronger. And if stuck, call myself. Come and have a little session with me in my Zoom room. I can be hired as a tutor for you, and we can show you how to use the software better for yourself. And if you don't know and want to do the programming, as Michaela has said, or Michaela, if you can even post a link to the Odyssey program, or just go to, Inside Health Apps and look at the Odyssey program for those of you who don't want to do any programming and you just want to start broadcasting right to your wristband through pre-programmed journeys for you. Okay. So there's thousands of years of wisdom in here. The programming has taken us decades to get settled down. We've used literally, 100 years of technology to get up to these computer speeds. We've really got fantastic non-invasive strategies. So there's almost no reason why you shouldn't be taking your health back right now and doing something about your own self-care. Because believe me, the amount of poisons, pollutions, toxins, GMOs, electrosmog, magnetized foods, medical interventions with side effects, drug reactions, you can't be perfectly healthy. Nobody I've met has a perfectly detoxed body, okay? Maybe this 182-year-old guy running the marathon and the triathlete in Hawaii who came to my booth and said he wonders if he should run today because he had a cold. And when I scanned him, he had the most perfect scan I've ever seen on anybody in my entire, 20-year career. So I figured he must have been an angel. Otherwise, if you're human, you're going to have some problems. So go back and look here at this new wearable LED link here. I don't know if you guys want to take a screenshot of this, or maybe I will just post it right into the, I don't know, can I post that into I'll just post this right into the chat box, okay? Control copy, throw that over to the chat box and pop it in there. If you guys want to get a head start on checking out this technology, I strongly recommend it, okay? Now, I promised somebody to do a case study on today, but honestly, I just wanted to finish off this last lecture on LED light therapy. And I will, Jeanette, get to your case study either in private or again next week if you'd like to volunteer, and to get you a sample of how we can actually use the Genius program in solving certain cases. Now, I should open the mics and see if you have any questions, but in the meantime, I'm going to run over to our chat box and see what questions might have popped up. Are the Genius organ frequencies 440 or 432? They are actually all frequencies, okay? They are both because they're actually digitalized. So the frequencies that have a fraction behind them were derived from a 440 scale. The frequencies in the 432 scale, especially regarding minerals, are whole notes. What was the $8 million study on NASA's microtesting of the brain? Basically, they wanted to find out how much tolerance to PEMF. When the astronauts were up in space, they got a lot of EMF stress. In fact, I met one of the inventors at microalpha.org or .net, where he actually put plates inside the spacecraft to absorb some of the EMF stress in the these hollow aluminum tubes flying through the Earth. But there was a study in the Power Tools for a New Age, I think, textbook that describes that study in detail, and it shows how the 33 to 66 microteslas was ideally the range for the optimal brain performance of the astronauts. And the Earth is about 47 microteslas, so it sort of makes sense that we might fluctuate around the Earth frequency, something that mimics it, okay? Has anybody ever used colored glasses for therapy? Isn't that funny? You should ask. I just brought them out here yesterday. Okay. So I don't know if you guys can see my face here. Could I somehow, what can I do here to make my face? Can I just make myself a speaker somehow in a big screen? I guess I have to stop sharing. Okay, let me stop sharing here. Just a second. Okay, so let me show you. I came across this at the Jeffrey Bland event in Seattle, Washington. And I was with an 8-year-old autistic ADHD pyromaniac wild boy. I was babysitting my friend's son. And this boy was running around the convention floor, making hell on wheels for everybody. And the psychiatrist came up and said, "Hey, Sonny, you want to see my glasses?" So she puts on the blue glasses to calm him down. And then he starts going, "Well, I want to try some more." So he goes, "Oh, this feels good." Then he puts on the orange glasses and he goes, "Oh, this feels even better." He puts on the pink glasses and he starts sitting back in his chair like, "Oh, the zinc is coming into think," right? Then he starts putting on the dark red glasses for the deep. Sorry, I broke one of the lenses here. So he's putting on the big red glasses, and suddenly, I guess he basically almost falls asleep in the back seat of the car. So I keep on driving. I took him home, and he asked me if he could play with the glasses in the back. And I turned around in the car, and he puts one on for green, and he goes, "Oh, my heart loves this one." And he puts on the yellow ones on top of it. Then he puts on the blue ones. And by the time he's finished, he's got like 7 pairs of glasses on. He goes, "Now this really feels right." I laughed so hard. He was telling me that he was missing all these minerals, and that I was, what I had missed in him was that he had mercury poisoning, paralyzing his thyroid. His mother had 35 fillings in her mouth. Her dentist was arrested for putting in fake fillings. He was born during this time when she had all the metals. So he, without a filling in his mouth, had massive mercury poisoning of his thyroid. The quantum scanner picked this up. So we removed the mercury out of his thyroid and put all the colors back in. And this child stopped being ADHD overnight, went to become a A+ student, valedictorian, head of the football team, and is a just incredible recovery story. So that's the first experience I had where matching colors could have such a profound effect, okay? So I hope you like that story, because I personally think that, it's important to use all the methods that we have. Now, beside me, I also have the other light therapy unit, the Bioptron industrial light. There's a large one for hospitals. This is the tabletop one, and there's a handheld one with smaller ID. It has a lens on it here that has color of all the rainbows. So if I put all those sunglasses together, they put each frequency of each color in that lens, called German crystal quartz cut glass frequencies, right into the lens. So now you're getting the frequency plus the color delivery at the same time, but it doesn't have the PEMF in it, nor can it be programmable. So they program some of the most important frequencies for each color. And over here, I have the other lenses that have one lens for each color of the rainbow. So you could start with you always start with 8 minutes of the full spectrum light, then you move up through the colors that are necessary for whatever the person's condition are, ending again with green light to stimulate ATP and DNA and 432 hertz repair. Okay, so we always end with green light typically at the end of a session to seal the deal, if you will. Okay, so that is called the Bioptron light, and I talked about it in our last lecture last week. If you want to have more details, or go to bioptron.com or call me. I'm one of the representatives, and I happened to work with Marcel Wolf at frequencymatters@gmail.com. He's one of the best reps in all of Canada and has studied this in great detail, and told me that they've also come out with another hyper lens as well. These are a little more costly, but for an office setting where you don't want to hand hold something, using this on its stand, I put it over my bed, put the light on me, and I just have like a 20-minute light therapy session before I learned about the Genius wand, or the Genius wearable. So there's another third recommendation that's just come off the market. We talked about it last week, called the terahertz laser. And instead of having low frequencies, it's super high frequencies attached to a laser in a hair dryer. You blow it down your spine, and it stimulates the stem cells by red light penetrating into the bone marrow of the spine and stimulating your stem cells. That one's also available. And I'm not here to cross sell anything. I'm just letting you know, as an educational event, that there are modalities that are coming out that are in the realm of this new age of technology that we all need to be a bit of aware of. Okay. It says I have a couple of HTMA tests, and I'm a fat oxidizer while my husband's a slow oxidizer. Would you suspect I'm a fast because I have parasites and worms eating my nutrition? Well, you should always work out that first. I've been up all night with a lady who had cancer of her scalp and her jaw and her throat, and was about to obstruct with congestive heart failure. And when I looked on her scan last night, it was massive tapeworm of the pancreas, causing a massive change in her zinc levels for cancer, and a diabetic acidosis that triggered hyperthyroidism and hyperdynamic heart failure. So here's a young woman going into heart failure all of a sudden from the parasites driving her thyroid into full copper overload. Okay, watch me for a second. Remember, copper, I got to make a picture here. Copper and zinc are on a teeter-totter with lithium in the middle. If the zinc goes down, the copper gets unopposed and is super inflammatory. Hyperthyroidism, hyperanxiety, hyperhistamine, hyper sweating, hyper heart rate. So so instead of people trying to give a drug to calm down the heart, how about bringing up the zinc by killing the parasites? So now we got the zinc and copper balance of the amygdala back in check, and we're not having a dopamine overdrive to the heart. Okay. So these are really important concepts you'll see them over and over again. You're going to get sick of me talking about this one day, but worms and zinc are the most hidden thing in medicine that cause asthma, diabetes, eczema, dementia, bloating, hemorrhoids, weight gain, low weight gain, thyroid disorder. So, I mean, it really is at the crux of the bioterrain that I've been teaching you for some weeks on end, as you know. Now, I know we're getting a little short on time. I better answer these other questions here. Hysterical. What are you saying, hysterical, Laura? You have the coolest stories. Give me so much hope. I love to learn about your stories. What light is this? The light of the bioptron light, are you talking? Liquid or chelated zinc. Personally, zinc is so powerful, like an orchestra conductor. It should be taken on the way to bed with no competition of a lot of other vitamins, because it acts like a magnet. And if you put iron and zinc together, they bind together, so you can't absorb either one. So you have your iron at lunchtime, but you have your zinc at bed. And 150 milligrams is quite adequate to stop the pandemic and or prostate insufficiency, but it can be a bit nauseating. So if you have it at bed, you won't even notice it. You're nauseated with it. Zinc metallicum in a colloidal form is presumably more absorbable than a pellet form. I personally like the zinc in the form of the natural food source, which is pumpkins, turkey, pumpkin seeds, pumpkin soup, pumpkin baked in squash, nuts like cashews or Brazil nuts, also turkey meat, especially turkey legs, mozzarella cheese, and my all-time favorite, especially for vegetarians, is Moringa oleifera, which is, I'm the spokesperson for the company purelifeglobal.com, spelled PYUR, lifeglobal.com / Dr. Drake. You can see the moringa there, the magnetized silver, the anti-parasitic and diabetic herbs that help you get over the parasites in your pancreas. You can tune into that another day. I'll be having some lectures on nutrition about that ever so soon, and I'll let you know the links. Okie dokie. So guys, whatever you need is going to be in the mineral world. I just wrote a chapter for the World Organization of Natural Medicine's annual Congress next month, and it's all about minerals. If you're grounded, you have the pumping pressure and the frequency control. So get on your good diet, eat well, eat ungenetically modified foods if you can that aren't nanobite magnetized. I saw last night putting magnets on your food and seeing that the turkey and the chicken and the meat and the whatever was sticking to the magnet. Even baby food was showing magnetic nanites in it. Maybe that's why a lot of this baby food was being destroyed. I don't know why. But I'm just saying to you that we have to actually start being in control of our self-care by knowing what's going into the body and what's being allowed into our mind. So I watched enough fear porn for 2 or 3 years now. I'm beyond it. I'm above it. I've got over the hump and said, if everything else is obsolete, we better get going on our own reformation of a better system. And so that has been my goal, is to teach you self-care. And I pray that every one of you would teach at least one more person, or one whole family, or one set of neighbors, or one clinic full of people. But that's how we're going to have to make old, dangerous, invasive methods obsolete, so that people just won't use that as an option anymore. They're going to come to something that's safe, non-toxic, uninvasive, portable, affordable, accessible for everybody, for equality in medicine. This is, we've got to, the elite of the have had a big wake-up call this week. The stock market crashed yesterday. Major corporations went down. The pound went to zero yesterday. Our old life is gone. Our old world in its infancy was corruptible and disintegrated. So now it's time for us to have smart thinking, clear minds, untoxic bodies to make good decisions, good relationships, good work, good environment, and just seek love, folks. Love conquers all. 528 hertz is DNA. It is the strand of God's universe, that 528 perfect angelic harmony that puts us all back into our most potential for miracles. So I believe in miracles. I trust in miracles. I perform miracles, and I rely on technology to guide me to where the miracle is. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that quantum medicine is far better than most of any allopathic things that I've done, because I don't have to deal with the side effects, the cost, and the non-compliance of the customer. When I put light on somebody, they get better that afternoon. In most cases, some improvement at some level, and the genius is telling you the percentage of improvement, so you can see how far away you are from the goal line. Last night, I took care of somebody who was so darn sick, I didn't think they'd last the night. And yet, by going gently and smoothly in chunks over time, exactly what they needed, here they are having a crazy improvement this morning that nobody can believe. So on that note, I want to send my love out to all of you. I want to send out my love out to the world, and I want you all to send out your love. I'm going to post this interview back in our ilovemygenius.com website under the blog there, and I'll post the little replay of our little PowerPoint there too as a little addendum. For those of you who missed my last 5 classes, I put a gigantic 260 slide PDF of everything we talked about light for the last 3 or 4 weeks up in the blog there. So go ahead and download it. And I want to take a special shout out to Michaela. Michaela's been backing me up every time I deboot myself, need an upgrade, need a link, need a this, need a that. She's there day and night. All of a sudden I hear the sound in the background. It's so sweet. I just want to say thank you, Michaela.
I'm going to go to my desk for a few minutes.
Okay, so whoever's unmuted, I just want to have everybody in the whole, everybody unmute yourself, and let's all say goodbye to each other together. Put your camera on and let's all wave to each other and say happy light years ahead, folks. We're launching the dawn of the new age of Aquarius together, and you are the primordial soldiers in that God's army of light. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thanks, Deb.
Take care. Thanks, Anne. All right, you guys, and Marissa, we'll see you again soon. And of course, Jeanette, I'm going to basically get on your case for a little demo, and maybe next week we'll have her volunteer, and I'll show you how I might put this to work in action. Okay.
Amazing class.
See one, do one, and teach one. So we'll see you next time, next Tuesday at same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I love my genius. If you see us on YouTube, please give us a like, a share, so other people will become aware of this. And if any of you need me, my ID and my contact number is Dr. Deb 432@gmail.com. Contact me if you need some help with anything. Until then, support at Insight Genius, insighthealthapps.com will be there to support you. Please go there and look at some of their products and libraries. There's wonderful teachers in this group who are volunteering their libraries for extra information, and it helps all of us when we teach together. I love the fact that you guys are harmoniously, generously, and infinitely sharing with each other. So keep up those comments on our blog, and we'll see you next week, folks. Bye for now.
Bye, Dr. Drake.
Bye-bye.